Hey guys, Pulkit here again. So I'm trying something new that I've kind of wanted to for a while, and I wanted to kind of share it with you guys. So the concept that I've kind of been thinking about is like I deeply believe that at the core of it, every person has like a very deep, interesting story inside them, and at the heart of it, feel like everyone wants it told, and very few people really get to tell it. Some geniuses at Pixar get to make a movie about it. So that's what this podcast at least aims to be about: talking to people and whoever they are, and just kind of deeply learn about them. They give us the gift of sharing their story and like their vulnerability, and we kind of give them the gift of an audience. So without any more gyan and without further ado, I would like to call on the first victim or the first guest on this podcast, uh, Aparna Warrior. It's warrior or warrior?
It's a warrior.
It's warrior.
Yes.
So it's an interesting thing if you were to actually show the mug to our audience.
It's not that interesting. It says don't worry or warrior, not warrior.
I mean, it's kind of the two facets of this wonderful person sitting next to me, who is a warrior, but also once in a while worries quite a bit. I'm worried that she's gonna throw that at my face. But to quickly introduce her, we've known each other for a while now, closing in on 11 years.
Wow. Okay.
Wow, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
She's had the misfortune of being my partner for the last 5 years, five and a half years,
With some breaks here
with,
and
with,
there.
with some breaks here and there. Not that many, but uh, she's also someone that I deeply admire and deeply respect, and I think has some very interesting experiences and interesting ways of thinking that I hope I can prod into. So without further ado, fourth wall. Let's get into this.
Alright. The problem with this format is I can't say stuff like "Arey, shut up" without it being recorded.
You can.
So there are usually our conversations look very different because I
Fair
don't
enough.
let you talk uninterrupted for so long.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So this is going to be a very new experience for me.
Well, I mean, this podcast is the story of you. So you.
That's very good. I'm happy. That's why I'm here.
Okay.
Right? I'm not going to come here to interview you.
Fair
Right?
enough. Fair enough.
Well, I mean, it's too early to say these things. But
Yes.
that is the hope.
That is the hope. So the only reason you're on this podcast is that you can actually finally talk and not have to
That's
listen
not
to me.
true. I think even without recording, what I'm saying is that I have to be more civil about my interruptions.
Fair enough. I mean, I don't think there's enough entertainment value to marital squabbles
This is not marital as of now.
as of now.
Mm.
Okay. So tell me about your earliest memories. What are your earliest memories?
Should I look there? Or should
No,
I
just
look
look
you?
at me. Just
Okay.
talk. I mean, the audience is interested in the audio anyway.
Okay. I like the what do you call it? The optimism. The audience is interested. Audio or video, but earliest memory. So I always say that my memory really sucks. I think it's true because a lot of people I speak to tell me about their childhood memories with a degree of clarity that I just don't have. So, um, so at any rate, my earliest childhood memories, uh, hmm, is with a cat called Chicky.
Okay.
So when I was really young, so this is before even kindergarten, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents in Kerala, in Trivandrum. And we had a cat, or rather, there was a cat who would visit at meal times, which is how cats are at Kerala, in Kerala.
Wait, so is this a cat that you guys had who lived with you was your pet, or this is just like some stray cat
no,
who came to
Chicky
you?
was our pet.
Okay.
But she didn't live in the house. In Kerala, cats typically don't. They go about their business during the day, and they come at meal times.
So maybe I sound like a very ignorant person here, but my understanding is that pets are those who live.
No.
with
Pets, no. She used to come every day. Anyway, so Chicky and I had a very strong bond. She was born, I think, about probably like at least she appeared about a week or so after I was born. So our age was about the same, and she appeared as a newborn kitten in our house.
What do you mean when you say appeared?
No, because some cat, her mom, she laid her kitten here near in our house outside.
And she just left.
Yeah. That's obviously you're not going to live there. No, they leave the kittens. Like some mothers come back and take care. Anyway, so my memory is when I was very young. I used to love Chicky. Okay. And I could spend hours just looking at her. So my one early memory I have is of me and Chicky sitting. So Chicky sitting there, and I am sitting like maybe 6-7 feet from her, and she's like she'll do some random things, right? She'll like snarl, she'll keep licking her body, she'll cockroach she used to play with. She used to play with the cockroach, not kill it. Very human.
Play or torture?
No. She'll just turn the cockroach upside down. So then the cockroach can't like cut. It'll be doing, na. So that is my earliest memory.
Are you sure this was the Chicky or this was you?
No, I would not touch all these cockroaches and all. I was really timid.
Okay.
I would just look. That's why I was fascinated by Chicky.
Who named her Chicky?
Probably me. I don't know. Like, because Amuma, my grandmother named her Chicky. Because Chicky is that groundnut sweet. No, it looks brown and white. Yeah. And the kitten was at the time brown and white.
Little like you.
I was not. No, not like her. Also, Chicky, even though she was my age, right? By the time I was like 2-3 years old or 4-5 years old, Chicky had generations of kittens. So it was like a very fast evolving life story. But that's my earliest memory.
So this is when you were
probably less than 2 years old. Yeah.
So that's not bad.
That's not bad, but I don't remember any. I just remember Chicky.
Okay. I mean, this is funny you bring up the memory thing because one is that at least you seem to suggest that hey, like my memory is not that good, and like you seem to remember these things.
No, but this is the only thing I remember. No? Okay,
but I've always told you that I never felt that your memory is bad. I thought your memory was just fine. That you were just conscious about it, but in one of our conversations, we discovered something interesting about your memory, where, and it was like mind-boggling to me because I just realized that.
That I don't have a very visual memory. That I actually don't have a visual memory. Most of my memories.
That when we talk about memories, we're talking about practically different hardware almost. So.
I mean, not hard. You don't have to. This is not a technical podcast.
Sorry.
There is no hardware.
But okay, so why don't you tell this story and how? Why
the difference is that a lot of
it?
people like you have very strongly visual memories. So when you are imagining or recreating something that happened inside your mind, you imagine it very visually. But I don't. Even when I'm reading books, and I love to imagine. But what I'm really imagining is like how the characters are feeling, or if it's a memory, then how I felt. Like I actually miss a lot of the visual details while I'm actually in that life situation, and also when I have a like a memory or a imagination of like, oh, what if this happens?
And
is this still recording?
I think so. I think it's
just check?
Locked.
I just want to make sure because I don't want all our amazing conversations to be
No, I think it's going. I think it's going. We can
You sure? Okay.
There was a tiny technical break. Pardon us. That we were just doing this for the first time. Yeah. So going back to memories. So yeah, that was very interesting to me because I almost realized that we were just talking about we were just perceiving our entire life when we talked, and we would talk about memories. We were just almost talking about completely different things. In the sense that we're talking about the same story, but how we perceive it is just so different. Because when I'm even talking about, hey, that day we did this, I'm almost creating like a scenery in my brain and I'm remembering it.
Right.
Whereas I actually felt that whenever we talked, your memory was just fine. You would be able to recollect things whenever needed just fine.
No, I don't remember the things we ate and many things we
Yeah,
saw
but
and the
those are
places.
extraneous details. But when we actually converse, like you're able to talk about those things just fine. But the way you remember them is almost by the outcomes. Like you almost remember all the feeling points
Right.
going through it. Like,
And so from there I kind of reconstruct, oh, I felt this when I was here or something like that.
but that's so deeply interesting to me. That it's fascinating that like it's almost like your brain is like it thinks slightly differently. It's like
I think all of our brains think very differently.
it's true.
And I think when we talk or write and read or like through music, we try to understand how other people feel and think. But we can only recreate. It's like we are trying to simulate what their feelings were. But we're not actually experiencing those feelings.
It's true. It's just I guess in my case, I imagine the situation and the memory, and then when I recreate that, I sometimes get the emotion. But for you, it's almost like the memory, the emotion is the
That's
memory.
it. Yeah. And then sometimes, like if you tell me, don't you remember we sat there and then we looked at this and then I can recreate
Exactly.
the
In fact,
things.
sometimes if I remind you of the emotion,
Ah,
then you remember the scene very vividly.
yeah. I mean, vividly. Okay.
Relatively vividly.
Yeah.
Right? But it's still it's fascinating. And so why do you think that is? Is that because you're very emotional, or is that because you just treat emotions in a very in a particular way?
No, I don't think it's because I treat emotions in a particular way. I think it is because I'm built like this that I treat emotions like that. Right? Like because my life experience is like this, I over index on the emotions.
That's interesting. So
1 second. So, what is this? I am curious for your plan of this podcast, which we have now decided is going to be some specific length, right? So, your hypothesis is that everybody is interesting, even a person like me.
oh, of course.
Even somebody like me.
Now
Anyway,
we're just going into mega
anyway.
self-deprecation, which we
So
don't.
no, that was not a self-deprecation. That was more like that was how you sold it to me. You said that everybody is interesting, even you. Yeah. So what is the like? What is everybody is interesting, I think. But what is it that you think people will find interesting to hear about somebody's life?
Let's just continue and
Okay.
we'll discover that along the way, hopefully. So, so I want to dig in a little bit into this emotions thing because I've always felt that you have, I mean, at least of the people I know, you're probably in the top few percentile or percentage of people.
Percentage.
Yes. Of people with emotional quotient like skills.
Oh.
Right? And it's for various reasons. Like you can perceive people being uncomfortable, you can perceive your own emotions and regulate them fairly well. You can.
Is that true? Is that really true?
Maybe not necessarily regulate. Actually, regulate is probably not the correct word. Like you are very in touch with them.
Okay.
And I feel like there is and that also allows you to understand other people and their emotions fairly well. What do you think? Like, how do you perceive this emotional intelligence, and do you think it's like a strength, a weakness, useful, really annoying?
For me,
Yeah.
Look, I think like all things, it's a strength and a weakness. It can be annoying, it can be useful, right? Like all of these things are just situational. I think it is important, though, for everybody because if you don't exercise this at the right time, it makes your life and the lives of people around you really difficult. So how I picked it up, I think a lot of us, everything that we pick up is by, what we see around us, right? So if people have been considerate to us,
Mm.
I think we learn the value of the consideration. Because let's say we were feeling humiliated or ashamed, and somebody said, hey, it's okay, don't worry so much, nobody saw it, like, you feel comforted, and you know the value of that. So if you have experienced that, I think you learn, if you pay attention, the value of that, and then also how to do that, right? Because it's been modeled.
Yeah.
So I think I've obviously been like super fortunate, to have really like attentive, loving parents, grandparents. I've had cousins, and well, when I was very young, I used to have like one close friend, and she was always my bench partner because I would not talk to anybody else. So friends probably a little later in life, but I think that's how you learn, right? Like you just live life, and then you just kind of model what you've seen around you, uh, and you hold on to the things that you feel have either worked or for some reason has resonated with a value.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's very true. In fact, like it was very late in my life. It's hard to say, but like I kind of just realized that, uh, you know, in a previous relationship.
Oh, previous relationship? What?
Oh yeah.
What is this?
Oh, of course, I
We
won't
have
admit
to
it.
now. Okay, all right, good.
That I just realized that like our capacity to love actually comes from having been loved. So if
You told your partner this?
yeah, I did actually.
Oh wow, amazingly well that must have gone.
But it's kind of surprising, right? Or like it's when you realize it, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But it's like, oh, actually, if you've been given a lot of love, it's just easy to then love accordingly.
I don't know if it's easy, but
Easier.
Easier. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
And then there's also all these things about like people's brain actually being wired differently, about the chemicals, about the hormone levels in our bodies being different, right? Some people just have more empathy. They're lucky, and obviously it's a skill you have to build other. But I think all of those things also should not be ignored.
yeah.
Because like I think when we tell people to be more positive or happier or like all of these things, we are telling it as if it is something that is under their control.
So that actually is such a deep point because it's this funny thing, right? Because we almost it's like society as a society we have these behaviors and we expect people to kind of follow that to some extent, to a large extent, in fact. And the funny thing is that each of our we have a lot of neurodiversity. Our basic brain chemistry is different. Like, yes, you can like let's just see a John McEnroe or a Serena Williams lose their shit on court and be like, what the hell? But at a fundamental level, like some people are just hot-headed. Like you can tell them, hey, calm down, but their base threshold is different.
Also, it's like that much harder for them
Exactly.
to do whatever it is
Exactly.
that you're saying is so
Exactly, and
minimum.
and it's doubly difficult because it's like let's say if your brain chemistry has been wired a certain way because of the things that you've seen maybe while you were 13, by the time you were 13, then it's actually quite hard. Like for somebody who is generally not short-tempered to just not be short-tempered compared to somebody who actually is
Wait, you
short-tempered.
said that, I think.
Incorrect. But yeah, there we get the point. Okay, but I want to take a brief detour from here into
Brief detour.
into one of the people you kind of mentioned with your first memory was that you were with your amuma.
With my maternal grandmother.
Grandmother. So why don't you and from having known you, I know that your maternal grandmother and your maternal grandparents in general played like an important role in your life. Tell us about those relationships.
So like I said, I spent a lot of time with my maternal grandparents when I was a child. So both my parents were working. So I think before my schooling started, I spent a significant amount of time, like maybe a couple of months at a stretch with my grandparents. And then once schooling started, I'd spend every summer vacation. So that's about 2 months with them. And not just with them, but like my cousin sister would be there, and then my cousin sisters when there were more. My mamas, so my uncle, Ammavans rather. I don't know why I'm saying mama, I've never called them mama. So it was, I think, where as children, uh, your bond with your grandparents is going to be very different from your bond with your parents or any other adult figure, because at least in my case they weren't there to uh, scold me on the regular boring stuff, because I was there on a vacation, right? So my entire memory is just all positive. Like, oh yeah, like, oh, it's vacation, and like my grandparents are making the things I like. Of course, they were like, we have to do like the boring duties. Like grandfather will be like, Pupan will be like, clean this, water that plant, go to that tumbaram and get this one box filled with one thing, because all children have to do these duties. But so my relationship with them evolved with a lot of time and affection and just like a lot of carefreeness. And I think even though it was a limited capacity, because I'm getting to know them in the role of a grandparent, when I was very young, they were fully adults, like in their, that stage of their life. I feel like I really got to know them as people rather than just the relationship of like, oh, grandparent, granddaughter. And so, for example, I knew that my grandfather felt very strongly about workers' rights, because he was part of he led the kind of newspaper trade for a worker union. I knew that, and later on he became like religious, so I knew how he felt about religion. He was the one who would always like encourage us to put up our artifacts for sale. So he'd be like, you write your stories, and then at the end of the vacation you can sell your stories. They'll only buy for like some 50 paise. But so I felt like I got to know them as people, right? Like he'd talk about why he liked gardening. We'd have pets sometimes, so then it was about how you need to take care of pets. It was always through a lot of doing, not just talking, but we also spent a lot of time talking, which is, I think, how you really get to know people, both by doing and talking together.
It's kind of fascinating because now that you mention it, like I have four, well, as all people do, four grandparents, and only one of them is alive now. And I feel like I knew them from the relationships because they were like doting on me. But I never really knew them as people.
I think to know them as people, you need a lot of time and space, and everything else has to be perfect. Because otherwise, if there's something else going on that requires priority, let's say they're always in the kitchen cooking. I mean, my grandmother was not, so I got to know, and my grandmother is one of the most positive people ever, most stable person. You can't, like, there's no way anybody can find, but also very stubborn. Anyway, so I guess you need space. Like, if she was always bothered about the food, you won't get to know the person, because like you need the person to relax. And then
So I also find your grandparents fascinating for like some other reasons. Like one of the things I from what I remember you told me about your grandfather was that he was like very staunchly supportive of like women getting very good education.
oh yeah, so he
and,
wanted
and
my
working.
mother and my aunt. So he had 2 daughters and 2 sons. He wanted his daughters to definitely be working and earning money before they got married, which for his time, it wasn't like standard practice.
So just to place this in context for our listeners, this is like India in 1950s, 60s.
This is not India in 1950s, right? By the time my mom
I'm
was
saying,
old
look,
enough to get married, it was 1980s.
Yeah, but okay, fair enough. So, but his views were such when he was probably in his 20s or 30s.
Oh yeah, well, I mean 30s, yeah, sure.
30s.
Like,
so this was like maybe 1970s or 80s.
yeah, 60s, 70s.
60s,
something
70s,
like
right? So, I mean, I grew up and I think even like my parents, obviously, like I think they were like relatively progressive compared to the people around them, at least. But definitely from even having grown up in a metropolitan urban city, like I think such views even in people like uncles and aunts, like who are one generation above me, your grandparents' views in this case, I think, are like far more progressive.
I mean, even now,
than
right?
even now.
Right. It
But
just
I'm even
depends.
talking about like urban centers, not even like
But
towns or
even
villages.
it's like even in the same place, inside different families, the worlds look very different.
Exactly. So, but what I'm just, I guess, trying to get out is that it's quite ahead of its time given the location that he is in.
That's true. Although Kerala, of course, is like, oh, what happened?
Don't worry about it.
Is has always had like high education,
We'll make it.
the work including for women, but in terms of working, that is not that as common. And but the other thing is, I think in Kerala, like everybody who gets a job works, so like it's not like that. um, but I think what really is what I've really appreciated is that he actually treated everybody exactly the same. Like his daughters and his sons, he treated them exactly the same. And I never got a sense, he never told me anything that I have to do because I'm a girl or can't do because I'm a girl. No, but like both ways.
One of the things that I mean kind of really struck out to me when we were kind of discussing this was that like growing up, like I was conscious about this because I have a sister and
Right.
I
And
was
maybe that's also another
and I
thing.
was sensitive about that difference, because I didn't want her, I wanted her to be treated as
The
well
same,
as I did.
yeah.
But what I found very striking was that you told me that it's only when you kind of went out in the real world is that you realize that this difference existed. Because
I mean, in school, of course, you feel. I don't think it's not. I think I didn't realize. I think within the family that it was not like a common thing. That's what. Like I always knew that there's a difference between girls and boys growing up, but I think the internal family impacts, right? Like for example, in school and during recess, the girls will not play as much as the boys, right? They'll be worried about sweating in their uniforms, whatever else. So, um, so yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I just felt that I was quite cool, really, for to have grown up in a family where you didn't feel that, and then only when you went outside the family that you realized that, oh, actually, there's something different
Yeah, I
in
think
the world.
inside the family, yeah, it's not like I was unaware. I mean, I always knew, right? Because I go to my friends' houses and stuff. But I didn't. I guess I don't. You don't think about those things as such. You're not sitting there trying to analyze them.
I guess maybe like it was more like, I guess I think I guess the way I remember the words were more like you never, because of the way you were raised, you never even considered the possibility that you couldn't achieve as much as any other
So
guy.
for example, smartness.
Which for a lot of other people,
yeah,
they actually have to kind of do the opposite. Where once they get out into the real world, they have to kind of realize that it is possible for them to achieve as much as another guy.
That's true. I think in terms of smartness, for example. Excuse me. Sorry. So this idea that girls are less smart or less funny or less those whatever, right? Those ideas, I think.
Less funny, I understand.
Yeah, but also less smart is also another possibility. But
I actually don't think that. This is just a dig because.
Yeah, right. Please.
Fine. But because she is actually a good much better at stand-up comedy.
Okay, much better because I have tried it.
Fair enough. But okay, but that's just, and I guess, okay, so before we move on, I guess the last thing that I would mention is, and we can go in as much as you want, but one of the things that you told me about your amuma is that when you were going through this period in your life where you were like getting a divorce, and that is something that regardless of how modern Indian family is, it is still something that's a bit iffy. And even your parents were like very worried about it. Funnily enough, from what I remember, the person in the entire family who was the coolest about it was your grandmom.
Yeah, that's true. She was like, the important thing is that you should be happy, and the ex-partner should be happy, and you both should. And I think the more important thing was that she said she trusted me. She was like, "Ni midikiyana," which translates as you are capable. I think midiki is something like capable. And she's like, "I know you'll do what's right," and she was not so worried. This is not to say it had no impact on her. This is what she told me. Right, and also again I think we can't discount the relational role, like the kind of flack, is that how you say the word, but that like your parents would hear versus your grandmother who's in like is different, but not to take away credit from where credit is due, like you're saying, I was like very, it was such a comfort and something went into my eye.
Yeah, which I thought was pretty cool, and I think it's like, I guess your family is a bit interesting in that it's like it's to some extent a very typical Kerala matrilineal family, in the sense that you managed to have like 6 or 7 kids who are all girls.
Oh yeah, all my maternal cousins are girls.
And how many are there? 6, 7? Okay.
5, dude.
Okay, 5.
I only have 5 cousins on my maternal
but
side.
Including
On my
you 6,
paternal
right?
side, yeah. On my paternal
like,
side,
like
I have
6
brothers
daughters
and
in the
sisters.
entire generation.
Right, 6 daughters.
Okay, fair enough. So now I would like to kind of do a bit
Just for me to set expectations. Like, is there like a...
are you tired? You want to
I'm
break?
not tired. I guess I could. I'm just trying to understand. I'm trying to prepare for like how much more is there.
I think the idea is that let's just talk. I think I'm having fun. Are you having fun?
No, but I want to know.
So this is, I guess, one of the differences that we go through, that you like to be a little prepared and know.
I just want to know. It's not about preparation.
So I think there are like a few more things I want to.
So how
talk
long
about.
have we done?
Maybe an hour.
An hour?
Yes.
Then we need a break.
Okay, I mean, what do you want to do? You want to drink some water?
I want to go pee and all, and then
I told you to pee before.
whatever. I need a break then.
Okay, why don't you then take a break, and then we can just continue in like a few minutes.
Okay.
Back. Hey, so we are back after the break with my conversationista.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, I'm not sure what the correct word is, but hey, so let's start on a slightly different track. One of the very kind of unique things that I know about you is just how much of a hopeless romantic you are.
What? Stop! No, you don't say. Okay.
So let's delve
How
into.
is everybody not a romantic? This is what I know. I want to know.
I mean, everybody is somewhat romantic. You are like, you're not even like a cliched romantic. You are just romantic in a very different way. And
No, I am cliched romantic.
at how it expresses itself to some extent, perhaps. But like, okay, what is your first memory of first romantic memory? And I'm not talking about the laser light. We'll get there.
We'll get there. First romantic memory. Of desire, basically.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about. So, shit, it's very difficult. But I think that there was a boy when I was in primary school who used to sit behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, me and my partner, I'm not going to take names because I'm sure there's only my friends who will watch this. So, me and my desk partner, we were 2 girls, and behind us there were 2 boys. We had some system in school where it was like one girl bench, one boy bench, so that we all don't talk or something. Okay.
Wait, so even in like class 2, they were worried that the girls and guys will be together?
No. We used to make a lot of noise.
Okay.
So the assumption was that if you let all the boys sit together, it will be just too rowdy.
Fair enough.
So they would alternate. So they would alternate one girl bench, one boy bench, one girl bench, like that. Okay. So behind me, these 2 guys used to sit, and there was one guy who was tall and thin, and I liked him. Okay. I think, like, not like as I'm like writing love letters, but I liked him. And unfortunately, I think he liked my desk bench. So that is my first
And I mean, that has never happened again in your life.
Of course,
obviously.
everybody just
Obviously.
loves me.
Exactly.
Like, it never happened
That
again.
never happened again.
Oh, man.
I mean, but that's so. How old were you then?
So like let's say second or first standard or second standard. So that's
Six.
2, 3, 4, 5,
Yes,
6 and 8.
6, 7.
Mm.
But actually, the memory that you told me, which I know of, is even younger. Like you told me about some.
Oh, that's not a romantic memory. That's just a children playing without knowing what it is.
That is a very. I would beg to
Okay,
differ,
fine.
but why don't
Okay,
you first
so
tell
I
me the
outlined
story?
the situation.
Okay.
The situation was me and Annie, who was my friend, who was my building friend. She used to live 2 flats below me. We used to play house, and this house, we play everything. Like we are adults and living our lives. We were neighbors also. So we pretend like we are having these parallel lives where both of us are doing exactly the same thing. So like we both will go to office, come back, then we'll cook. Or then like we'll have our husbands are pillows, okay, so then we like have our dinner with our either husband pillows or like with each other if we're joining together, and then we go to sleep and all. When we go to sleep, we'll hug the pillows and give a full chuma. But I mean, that's, you can't really call it a romantic, because we were just aping.
But how
what
old
was
were you?
This is like around probably similar age, no, like some 5, 6.
Okay. But when you told me about it, I recollect you telling me in a way that, hey, like there was like an ache almost that, oh my god, will I ever get this in life?
No, that is a feeling that has accompanied me throughout. I don't know when it started. This ache of unfulfilled desire.
Has it stopped?
No, I mean, I don't think.
Okay.
I mean, it's
That
like,
doesn't bode well.
but it's not that kind of. It's that ache of like wanting,
Yeah.
like romance. No, like it's a.
I don't know many people who had that at that age.
No, but at that time, like I said, at that time it would have been like a kiss, right? I'm like fantasizing about a kiss, like oh my god. So that's about. I mean.
So, okay, but I mean, I find it fascinating that you have such a strong sense of craving or desire of that.
For romance.
Yeah, and that comes out in slightly weird ways when you're a teenager.
Right.
From what I've heard.
And I'm a teenager. That when I was in 6th, if you're talking about laser light boy.
Yes.
When I bought a.
So you sexually harassed.
Didn't sexually harass, dude. If you're gonna upload this, I didn't sexually harass anybody, just for the record.
I mean,
There
it's
was a
beyond the statute of
It's not,
limitations.
and also it's not sexual harassment. Let's just be very clear. I was obsessed with this boy,
Okay.
and I once took a laser light keychain that I had bought expressly for the purpose of laser lighting him. And when he was walking on the street, going to buy bread or something from my 3rd floor apartment, I laser lighted him once, then I hid. Then I laser lighted him again, and he was like getting confused, not understanding what is a laser. 3rd time he looked up, and I was there, and I was like, oh my god, and then I hid, obviously. And then the next day in school, he came to me in recess, and he's like, hey Aparna, yesterday you put your laser light on. I was like, what? No. First of all, I don't talk to boys, okay? I mean, there are like a couple of friends in our group who it's like, we talk, but this boy walking up to me, talking during recess, and then accusing me of laser lighting him. This is too much, I couldn't
So you
accept
first
it.
laser lighted him, then you gas lighted him.
Correct. I said no. He said no, yesterday I saw, and I was like, no, I didn't see you. And then he didn't know what to say, so he walked away. Like, that was the laser light story.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's. I mean, I guess if we start going through Aparna's hits, when it comes to this, I'm pretty sure we'll probably be here all evening.
Right.
But we have limited time, so we can move on. But prior to that, would you like to give a shout out to this boy
No, no, thank you.
and like finally reveal the story
No, I think he knows because.
about the laser light as well?
Laser light, I'm not so sure if he knows, but I did tell him after like a decade or something that I used to write love letters to him, and I sent him a sample just to
Yeah.
just to make him believe me. I actually probably also to surprise him. because I don't think he would have ever guessed.
So you don't want to tell
Why will I?
him
Please.
and his beautiful
No,
wife.
they both know. That's okay. That's enough.
Okay, fine. So we don't want to give a call out to
Hmm.
him. Okay. So so now I want to just get like a little bit into like so I've always kind of felt that as kind of kids growing up, whether it's like high school or like college or whatever, there's this period of life where we suddenly kind of to some extent find ourselves and we kind of form an identity and things like that. What do you think was that phase for you, and what was that formation like?
Definitely undergrad. So definitely during my 4 years of engineering college, when I was living in a hostel in a state that was very far from anywhere I'd been, um, and surrounded by people who were like me in ways that I had never imagined possible. Like you find like those kindred spirits, or whatever you call them.
Kindred spirits.
And then so that was definitively the time where I found myself, because I felt uh, able, like free, supported, and not alone. So
Which is kind of fascinating because from what I know, most people who like leave their homes for the first time and go to a new college in the middle of nowhere, they can often feel very isolated for a while.
I was very isolated. I didn't have any. So there was only one other human being who I knew who was coming with me. There were only two of us from our district, I think, or no, but at least at the time. And I had no friends, no seniors. I didn't know anybody who had gone to this college also, but it was a good college. That's why I went. And I it forced me out of my comfort zone in a way I never imagined possible. So I was always like more on the reserved side. But when I got there, something just snapped, I guess, because I realized that if I don't talk to anybody, then nobody will talk to me. Because I saw people coming in groups of like 15 and 20, and they all were talking to each other in like their own native language. And I was just like, if I don't go and say hi, I'm just going to be on my own. And on the first day I was walking around talking to people, I talked to somebody till midnight. And I, like many of my school friends don't believe the kind of transformation I had in college, because my image in college was so different from my image till then.
So that's very interesting you mentioned that. One is that what is fascinating is that in a college like that, you mentioned native languages. You might actually have within a area of like maybe hundreds meters 20 different native languages being spoken in different groups.
Yeah.
But the other thing you mentioned is very fascinating to me because you said that your image that you had in undergrad was very different from your image in high school, and like nobody could believe that. One of the things I believe is that part of the reason why people kind of find themselves when these switches happen is because they get a very rare opportunity to leave the baggage of that old reputation behind.
Yeah.
Is
Nobody knew me, so
exactly,
I could be anybody.
Anybody.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I'm going to college, and this is where you see like a lot of these people who are perceived to be complete nerds, right? And for once, well, now they've got into college, and they don't need to be perceived like that anymore. They can rewrite their story. So you just see somebody who's like like a weed smoker, rock guitarist who might have been like the greatest nerdist character in high school.
Of course, there's another contributing factor there, which is that we're without parental supervision, and that often does that as well.
But it's really fascinating because I mean we even know friends who've like almost kind of left cities and gone to a different cities. There's a certain sort of freedom
there. Yeah,
it's very interesting. What were you most insecure about
in college?
In college,
I mean, I was really worried about my grades in my third year. I remember the third year because the first and second year were easy. Well, easier because they were like the basics. But in third year, all the computer science students, and I was doing computer science, were put together, and they were all like very hardworking, very smart, and the courses were difficult, and I wasn't paying attention. because I was, involved in like other clubs and activities, college activities. So I was really insecure about, because my identity all through school and stuff was like a person who studied well, who did well in academics. So in third year, I suddenly found that that was not the case, and so I was insecure about that. That if I'm not that, thankfully I had these other identities, which is like, oh, I'm like the editor, or like, whatever, something or the other, actor. I started acting in my third year, but but not so much. I think in college, what was I insecure about? I guess the way I looked. I guess maybe because for the first time I was thinking about how I looked. Uh, but luckily I had a boyfriend. By the time I was in third year, when it would have gotten a little, and he was like, "Oh no, you look great." So then it's like he has to. I know he has to, but I'm just saying it helps, right? Like, because you've never thought about how you look. But of course, also in my college, nobody looked good. So I guess I was not that insecure in college.
But it's interesting that you mentioned that about studies, because, like, from what I know you, and I mean, people can learn this. Like, you were, by the way, Aparna was like a entire district topper in her school. And
Only in
stuff
my
like that.
12th. Only in my 12th standard. Yeah.
Yes, and through most of your schooling, you were
Yeah, I
in
was
the top
good.
three.
Maybe
Right.
five. Top five.
Top five, whatever, right? That's still
Yeah,
something.
no, I was very good
Right.
in accounts.
So it's almost, I mean, I've always perceived you a little bit like this kind of slightly Hermione-ish kind of character.
That's because once
right?
you decide that you're going to immerse yourself in the Harry Potter universe.
Okay. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is it's this weird thing where this is something that you've kind of been like good at pretty much your entire life, and you've gotten a lot of feedback that hey,
That
like
this
you are
is-
actually very good
Yeah.
at it,
But I was always insecure about academics.
and then that is
So like even when I was coming second or third, right, I like go home and cry after a math exam because I couldn't figure out the difficult problem, and so I felt like I was not smart. I don't know why I couldn't figure it out. So
do you think that still affects your life, or in the sense that how did it shape you both positively and negatively, because it clearly propelled you to do well and go on to do well in life in some
how
ways.
did what propel me?
I mean, this fear that I'm not
Good enough?
smart enough
Or like smart
good
enough? I don't think it did anything good for me, honestly, because I would have studied anyway. Like I was a good I was a good kid, and I was trying to do well in academics. And even if I was not insecure, like for example, English, I was always the topper, and I loved English as a subject. But even before English exam, I was preparing. It's not like I thought, oh, party karenge, nothing like that, right? So I don't think there was any use. I wish I could have gotten rid of it. But then, of course, that's not human also. So.
But I mean, clearly, you figured out a way to deal with it
Now,
as you grew,
I mean, now,
grew older
yeah.
and mature.
Yeah.
How did you work that out?
I think when you when you're surrounded by really good people and you see that they are also struggling, like they also have fears or uncertainties, and then it calms you down, thinking then like it's not just you, right? And then you also realize that there's nothing, like you're fine, you're not worse than the others, you're not better than the others, but you're all the same. So
That's very interesting. I've often heard you mention that, and that when it comes to, like you earlier mentioned, this sense of identity, right? Where you are, I don't have just one identity now. I have like 5 others. So it's okay if I'm not like the best at one. And I've kind of heard you mention this before as well. Like it's fine. Like somebody's better, somebody's worse, but ultimately we are all somewhat the same. And I feel like this creates a fairly healthy way of living for you. Like you have a fairly healthy approach to life, at least as of today, that you have come at, where it's like,
I mean, ask me again during promotion application time, and when I look at somebody my age.
but but
do
relative
really well.
to
And their salaries, yeah.
Okay, clearly not reached
Not
there
there
yet.
yet.
But jokes apart,
No, I'm serious.
but at least I felt that I mean, okay, like we are in Silicon Valley, Bay Area, where this is basically like, you know, a large, very dense cluster of similar sorts of
No,
insecurities.
but that's true everywhere.
That's true.
Competition is competition in the local pool, na?
Fair enough.
I'm not comparing myself to somebody in some other place.
Fair enough. But I guess what I was trying to say is that from what I've noticed in the people around us, even though we're discussing these things, I find you to be relatively calm and
That's
like
true,
relatively
but that's
zen
not
about
my.
these things.
That is because everybody else is screwed up. It's like not like I'm so great.
Okay.
It's like everybody else is like, oh fuck, like everything is going through. Like, you know, it's not that.
Okay, so okay. Fair enough. I mean, if the answer is that, well, I'm not better, others are worse, but still.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So now let's get into this slight, you know, quick question answer sort of thing.
Oh.
Like I wanted to get into, like, from what I know, you arts has like really shaped your life incredibly, whether it comes to reading, writing, theater, music, whole set of things. So what is your favorite music? Like tell me the three greatest
Oh my god, I
musicians
can't do
or
that.
albums or
What do you say?
soundtracks and how they've affected you. I mean, I'm not saying that those are the all, but just give me a few.
Okay, Coldplay.
Okay.
That's an easy one.
Okay.
Because I discovered Coldplay when I was in undergrad, and like we were talking about it, engineering days was a very defining. I was like finding myself, and the soundtrack was Coldplay, so just
association.
It's just association, and also I loved them, man. They were like, I remember like during my first college fest, there was like somebody like singing Yellow with like an acoustic. I was just like, and it
was this your first boyfriend?
No, my first boyfriend didn't play the guitar and all, and also that was not my first year, no. So anyway, Coldplay for sure, both for the music, the evolution of the music, the lyrics, and my introduction to that genre. I had not heard that kind of music before. Actually, I had not heard a lot of non-pop English music before college. I remember one of my first non-pop English songs was Kamya, who happened to be in the room opposite to me. We were talking, we became really good friends, and she couldn't believe that I had not heard rock music. And she was like, "What do you mean you haven't heard?" I was just like, "Give me an example." And she was like, "All these names," and I was like, "No." She was like, "You have to listen." And then she gave me her Walkman and the cassette, because this is those days. And I heard Smoke on the Water by Deep Purple. And she was standing there supervising me while I was like listening to that song, and she was like, "No, put it at this high volume and like listen." And I loved it, and I was just like, "Whoa, what is this?" You know, kind of. So anyway, so Coldplay for college, Rahman, everything by Rahman. That was like this soundtrack of my life, probably, right? Like you start with like a Roja or something, and then you.
And you got to hang out with him.
And I got to hang out with him. I have like a celebrity moment where I told him I'm Malayali too. Like, I'm like, "Hey, Rahman, you know what? We are very connected. Your wife and I." Anyway.
Wait, I'm Malayali too. He's not Malayali.
His wife is Malayali.
Okay, so that was like a.
I was like, "Hey, I know. And I was like, and he was like, "Oh, really?" Or I don't even remember how I just threw that into the conversation.
With him in Malayalam?
I said something in Malayalam.
Okay.
God. Anyway, so Rahman, all his music, just all his music, and what's fascinating about his music is that because it came with movies, and because movies are like a large part of my life, growing up and all, I understood how music can represent a whole story and an emotion, not just with the lyrics but with the tune. And I didn't know that was possible before. Like in Coldplay, the lyrics tell you the meaning and then you get the feeling. But Rahman because you watch the movie and you know the mood of the scene or the story, and you're like, my god, that music sounds exactly right, you know. Anyway, so that's second, and then third.
It's okay. I mean, you give me
Yeah,
smoke on the
good.
water. That's fine. But
Sure.
actually, this dovetails well into the next question that I had, which is, uh, give me a few movies that you think have been really meaningful in your life and like have like impacted you, or just like what are some really cool and great movies that you would think of?
Cool and shaped me. I saw someone who was like very.
Either or, doesn't have to be
I
mind.
mean, okay, let's college again. Then let's what is that? The trilogy, right? Like the Before Sunrise, Before Sunset. I was like, yes, romance. This is it.
Tying it back to the
God.
romance.
Yeah, so for sure, I was like, can this be real? Can this happen? I was just like, oh my god.
I'm glad you
the
lowered
whole
your
thing-
expectations after that.
You get older, you know. And then the whole idea of like somebody of traveling alone and exploring a new country, which is what the starting of that movie is. I was like, just that in itself is enough, right? Like, and then on top of that, all this. So that Bombay actually. The riots, when the Bombay riots happened, I was actually too young. I didn't realize what. I don't even have any like memories of that time. But I, when I watched the movie, it just talked to me in a very different way. And when I understood the movie, I guess, like really understood it, because it was just so. I don't know. Tragic is not the word, but like you just feel like it's so hopeless. Like these things are so meaningless, and there is so much tragedy because of these meaningless things, right? So Bombay for sure, and of course because it's Bombay,
You grew
and
up
like
in
I grew
Bombay.
up there. Um, and then I don't know. Do you want more? You said three. Uh, I guess let's recently. Oh my god! Like that movie got the reimagination of that story tale, the French story tale, The Little Prince.
Ah.
So that was a fantastic. It reminded me of all the feelings that you don't have words for, like when you are young and trying to understand the world, but you don't question a lot of things because you're learning the world and you think this is how the world works. And I loved what they did with that movie. I loved how they took a story that I deeply, deeply love, A Little Prince, and took it to a place that I could never have imagined on my own. Like,
And it's lovely the way the animation they did, like handwork
Oh,
and
like,
the
yeah.
paper mache animation.
yeah, it was fantastic.
And they also did like this extension to the story, but they managed to build the side story along with it. But they managed to really stay true.
And they stayed
Good.
true to that,
Yeah.
to the real heart of the story.
Yeah,
Right?
it's very
Fantastic.
impressively done. So I think those are very good recommendations. But now going to like from to slightly happier or like to lighten the mood, what would be your top few recommended stand-up acts? Because even though you love movies and all of this stuff, but you're actually pretty good at comedy and you love humor and
Like, you're too kind, honestly. I okay, but like stand-up comics, I actually these days I've been watching a lot more. When I say these days, I mean over the past year, I guess. Been watching a lot more Indian stand-up comics.
Hmm. So who
I
would you
didn't even
recommend?
know that. These days I've been watching more of our women actually. So I on Instagram I subscribe to that Aishwarya Raj, the one who went out with a bang,
Yeah.
the one who was like last in every round but went out with the
Yeah.
best comedy. I've been watching a couple of bits here and there. She's like very chilled out. But stand-up acts, I guess we both really enjoyed Kenny. I love his comics as well. Again on Instagram, and I just love his stand-up act as well. was?
Rohan Joshi.
Rohan Joshi.
Yeah.
And then.
Wake and Bake.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then who else? But yeah.
Is there like any like comedy performance that really stands out to you as like, hey, like this is like the definitive performance, or like I remember you really liking Bo Burnham.
Oh my god, yeah, Bo Burnham, and what is his thing called? I forget his.
I don't remember, but Bo Burnham's show on Netflix
My
was
god,
extraordinary.
it was extraordinary. It was like a music. It was not a stand-up. It was just a event. Fantastic performance art, I guess.
Yeah, I wouldn't even like call it just stand up. I was like, oh, I didn't know stand up could do this.
Yeah, it was performance art.
Yeah. Okay, now let's move into your love, books.
Oh.
I mean, Aparna is a great writer and one of those lucky few who knew from a very young age that, hey, this is something that deeply speaks to me.
Reading, yeah, and writing I used to do actually, but yeah.
So, just like, what are the books that have deeply shaped you, that are wonderful, or that you would recommend to people that, hey, like, just read this?
It's very tough to, like.
I mean, it doesn't have to be one or two. Just like think aloud and just keep.
I can just say stuff that has meant a lot to me at that junction in my life. Right? So, like when I was growing up, Enid Blyton all day long, like every single, and George. Like I think a lot of us, at least girls, would identify with like the tomboyish, brave, wants to do, not allowed to do. So the famous five by Enid Blyton. There's like a lot of Mallory Towers and some bunch of things. Anyway. And then a little older, there's like something called The Three Investigators. It was like the smarter version of Hardy Boys.
Oh, okay.
I like that. Again, kind of chronologically, so age-wise. Perry Mason, who I thought that lawyers' lives are like super exciting because I grew up on a steady diet of Perry Mason. I was like, wow, who wouldn't want to be a lawyer? And then.
Actually, I think you would have been a good lawyer.
My grandfather used to say that too.
Yeah, I mean, great reading, writing, communication, those are like your...
Fighting, he used to say it for. He was
fair
like
enough.
arguing.
Fair
like,
enough, fair
he was
enough.
like, please. Anyway.
That's probably what I should have said.
Sure. And then, Little Women. That was a book by Louis Got, right? That I really loved reading growing up. And then after, like, I guess young adulthood, I've still been mostly a fiction, like almost all my life. It's only over the past few years that I've really enjoyed non-fiction books. I pick up of my own volition, not because I'm trying to do the right thing, but just because I actually want to read non-fiction books. But I always feel like fiction speaks to me and to our souls in a very different way, because they can reveal like real truths without writing it out, because they'll make you feel it, and then you won't forget it. Gosh, it's so tough to give book recommendations. I put like a bunch of recommendations on my Insta stories these days just to mark it. Since COVID has started, if I like a book, I take a snapshot of it and like put like a two-word review essay. No, I'm blanking out. I don't know.
I mean, you've read like hundreds of books. Like
but I don't remember many of them. I only remember a few of them. I actually, Sophie's World. That was my introduction to philosophy, or Western philosophy at least. Sophie's World is a novel that in a very sneaky way manages to educate you about the history of Western philosophy. It's super interesting. Like they talk to you about Socrates and different existence, like many types of philosophy, but they do it through the book, like through the story. Super interesting. Philosophy wise, I really enjoyed How to Live, which I think I've been pushing you to read. It's a biography of Montaigne. There's also by the same author, Sarah Bakewell, there's a book called At the Existentialist Cafe, which is fantastic. Yes, highly, highly recommend it to everybody. There's nobody who wouldn't, I think, because it's about life. Like we're all alive, I mean, to the people who have the luxury of being able to think about life.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
What about the book that you've been gifting to like
Oh,
every person?
yeah, this year. So I've been, that was like a professor, it was like a surprise random find. Uh, I
Well,
heard a talk by this guy.
You were probably like half of his purchase history over the
Yeah,
month
and
of
then I've been
November.
gifting this book to everybody. It's called The Wonder Box, and it's a book about social history, which sounds crazy. Now all the books I'm talking about are not fiction, but I love fiction. Like, but this is a fantastic book. I hadn't read much about social history, but this book truly was like enlightening about so many of the things that exist in our world, how they've ended up like this, what it means, like what it means for us today. Very, very interesting.
Okay, so now let's kind of go to, I guess, the last question of this recording.
Oh.
So you finally get to be released. So I think by a lot of measures, I think like you've lived a pretty good life so far.
What? I'm not dying.
I know, but
Hopefully.
like,
I mean, we're all dying.
yeah, but like you've done fairly well academically.
Yeah. Oh, lucky.
You've
We
done
meant like a good life by like lucky.
You've done well professionally. You've achieved, I think, a bunch of things in life. You've learned a bunch
But I
of
have
these
not
things.
had a child. That is my family.
Fair
Is
enough.
this a good life? I don't know. Let's see. Anyway, yeah.
You've inculcated, you've learned a bunch of things, you've expressed yourself, you've learned a bunch of artistic things, you've had a bunch of very good relationships, created a good supportive community of friends and family around you. And come, I think, a pretty long way from, the slightly scared 13-year-old,
scared.
heavily romantic, but constantly like slightly timid
Yeah,
kid there was to
that's true.
going to teach inmates during your masters, doing a bunch of very
Stand-up
interesting
comedy on
things.
stage
Stand-up
of
comedy on
my
stage.
own. Like nobody was threatening me. I got up on stage on my own.
Doing,
Theatre
millions
also
of
you can
dollars of
actually.
deals.
Oh please, now it's too much. Like, get to your question.
So, I mean, what would your advice be to, that full of energy and fire and hope, but like also slightly worried and anxious teenage girl who's a little cool, but a little awkward, but a little weird?
I think I just tell her to like chill a little. I was like too worried about not worried as such, but like I was afraid. And I didn't know what I was afraid of. Like it's not like I was afraid of something specific, but I lived my life, so many things. I was just so scared. I think I would try to keep telling her, hey, don't be so scared, it's okay.
But I mean, you managed to do a bunch of things while being scared.
But when I was like a child, wait, what are we talking
I
about?
mean, I'm just saying that like you managed to break that fear.
That's true, but like I was thinking of like what I would tell her. Yeah, just tell, don't be scared.
I actually think that's simple, but that's pretty profound.
Yeah, I mean, what else? Don't be scared. It's okay.
I think that's good enough to end on. I think that's like
okay.
I think that's really good advice. Don't be scared. There's actually no reason to be scared.
Yeah. I think it's good advice even now for me. Like
It's true.
for me to tell myself, like don't be scared. Yeah.
It's true. Okay. Thank you so much for being
Thank
the first guest.
you fully. Thank you for doing this. I wish you great success. I wish you better future guests. And
I hope I hope you continue to do this, and maybe you can come again.
maybe I can come again. Season 2.
Yes, season
Season 2.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks
Signing
everybody.
off.
Bye.
If you made it up till here,
If you made it up till here, please send us an email. Or
we'll buy
please
you a
prove
drink.
it. Yeah. Or we'll see if you're COVID safe, we'll send you a gift card. Go buy a drink.
Or that.
But you have to answer some challenge questions to prove that you have actually heard it.
This is the
on
banya.
email. This is not the banya. This is just verification.